Hi, it's James. This is a Teach, Move, Inspire project Soundbite, and the focus is on meaning and what that means, ironically, what meaning means, how to find it, and how to bring more of it into your life. And it's a subject that I think is just totally fascinating, and something that I feel is super important to reflect on, to dive into, to mull over and to ponder over a period of weeks and months and years, because it's extraordinarily deep. I find that when I'm living and acting a life out of accordance with the meaning, it can be busy and there can be a lot going on, but it doesn't have anything to rest into. It doesn't feel so fulfilling. I'm sure you've had your own experiences with this. And the topic, the way that I'll bring it forward in this short clip is, it's a combination of different thought ideas and different teachers that I've had over the years. And it's the way that I work with our 300-hour students on our trainings to help get them in touch with what it is that they're meant to be doing, what it is that lights them up, and what it is they can give, out into the world. And I think it starts at an interesting place. It starts in a place of looking at the fundamental nature of reality. It's a big statement. It starts with an idea that is present in every major religion in different ways, either symbolically or explicitly, like in Buddhism, with the base idea of the being of existence being suffering. You've probably heard it's kind of a translation from Buddhism, life is suffering. Now that's an interesting idea. It's interesting that it's been repeated over and over again in different ways, from Christianity to Buddhism to Nietzsche. And I remember I did a small poll on this a few weeks ago. I just asked people on Instagram, do you think that life is suffering fundamentally? And it was interesting the responses that I got back. About 70% of people said no, and about 30% of people said yes. So before I go any further, it's interesting to think about, and you can put a comment in if you like. Do you think the base reality is suffering? I think a really common response to this is to go, no, there's plenty of happy moments in my day. Life is what you make it. It's the lens through which you see it. And if you see it as suffering, you'll see suffering. If you see it as joyousness, then you'll see joyousness. Yeah, I think that has some truth to it too. And yet I think it can go a layer deeper. It's not about how happy you are on a day-to-day basis. Happiness comes and happiness goes. It's about what the underlying structure, when you step out of your day-to-day, of what experience is. It's when you realize that every moment you're growing older and closer toward death, that you will die, and that everyone you've ever known and loved will die, and that whatever it is that you build will be forgotten. That has some weight to it, right? Like when you really let that sink in, that has some serious weight to it. So I don't know if life is suffering, but I do know that that has that flavor of heaviness and weightiness when I contemplate mortality. And that if I go into that, it can turn to nihilism very easy. Like, what's the point? Why am I doing anything? Why do this video? I was thinking about it today. What's the point? And then I think the point is to realize that because the fundamental nature of reality is that we are dying, it's impermeable, it moves, it shifts, that focusing on things that don't bring meaning does bring suffering. And I think you might have experienced this. I for sure have. I've worked in jobs that on paper look amazing, traveling the world, earning huge amounts of money, having a great lifestyle, but feeling totally empty inside. We see it time and time again when our students come to Ubud. So knowing that focusing on the wrong things doesn't create meaning but does create suffering is a good start point. So then you ask yourself, what can I do about this fundamental nature? What can I do about the fundamental nature when I look into it, that everything is going to move and pass away? And one can be, well, I want to strive to be happy. And there's a whole philosophical genre that relates to this. But I think happiness is fleeting. You can be happy day in and day out, and it comes and it goes. It's like the tide. You can look for fulfillment, which I think is richer, but it's not the whole story. I think the value is in searching for and looking for and bringing into your life more things that give you a sense of meaning. More things that give you a sense of meaning. That type of thing that when you wake up in the morning and you do this thing, by the end of the day, you can rest in your bed exhausted, maybe a little scooped out or empty feeling, but totally contented. You don't even have to feel happy, but contented that what you did that day helped something in you feel like you were moving towards the right direction. So you have the concept of life as nature of existence is suffering, and then you know you can come out of it by striving for meaning. The next question is, how do you find meaning? When it's so personal and it's so unique to the individual and what they do in the world, how do you find what is meaningful? I think it's easier than what you think. And I think it's a question that a lot of people look for. What's my purpose? What's my meaning? Why am I here for? Those questions can create more chaos than clarity. But when you look into the idea of meaning, I think one of the best ways you can do it is reflect. Write, meditate on, journal. Even for this year, so we're in March, we're only in the third month, can you look back on your past 3 months and have a look at the moments that you felt most lit up? The moments that you felt in flow. The moments that you felt like the universe was supporting you and you could move rather than fighting upstream. The moments, and I think this is a good one and it resonates with me a lot, where time disappears rather than ticks by slowly. And you look at these moments and you track them and you trace them. And you notice the feeling of the times when you felt like you're in flow or time has disappeared. And you make note of them. Because these are the time that your system understands that there's something happening that brings you something meaningful. It's the opposite of being bored out of your skull, right? Now, it's one thing to do this for the past 2 or 3 weeks, and it's a very valuable thing to do it for the past 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. To look at the times you felt most in flow, write it. The next step is looking at the thread between them. What is the commonality? There might be different situations, and then how can you bring more of this into your life? The next step is to look back even further, a year, 2 years, 10 years, your entire life, and look at the narrative of your world and the times in your life from a kid onwards that you felt most inspired, that you felt the time going by most quickly, consistently. And it creates a story, a narrative to what brings meaning into your life. And I'll give you an example from my own experience. And I've been playing with this for quite a while now, in a way rewriting and re-looking at my own narrative. I feel most in meaning and most alive when I'm working with groups. There's something about being in front of the group which is different to being on camera like it is now, which is different to one-on-one coaching, that I feel totally connected and totally in flow, especially if what I'm talking about has some depth to it. So when I look back at my life, how I got to know what this was, is I look back at the moments in my life that I felt like I was most in flow and in tune. And one of the very first ones I can remember was at primary school, and I was auditioning for Little Red Rocking Hood. I guess I was about 10 or 12 or something. And Little Red Rocking Hood was the school play, and I remember standing in the room watching the other kids, the other boys audition for the main part nonetheless, Wolf O'Malley. And just thinking and knowing that I've got this. Like before I even audition, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I walk up and I remember walking into the audition and it just dropped. I totally nailed it. Didn't have to think about it. I also remember being at my friend's 21st when her mother gave a beautiful speech and opened the room to speeches and nobody said anything. There was that awkward silence before I stepped into it and started speaking off the cuff in a way that felt real and genuine and beautiful and acknowledged and respected my friend. The same thing happened at school speeches, whether prepared or unprepared. My first job was speaking in front of 300 people. It wasn't exactly deeper material, it was sales, but it was the same thing. It was standing in front of a room, feeling connected to something greater than myself, watching the time fly by like a jet. So by the time I got to Ubud and started moving to the realm of teaching and working in transformation and coaching, when I reflected and looked back at my life, it was extraordinarily clear to me that what I feel, when I feel the most meaning, is when I'm speaking in front of a group. That's the first step. And then I can refine it further down into the topic of what I'm speaking about and the way that it wants to come through. Now, in the same way, it's like, okay, well, if you accept that there's some fundamental suffering in the world and that meaning is the thing that lifts you out of it, look for the moments that you have meaning in the past little while and then reflect over your own existence up until now and tie the common threads together into a narrative that allows you to have direction. Because without the direction of where to move forward in a meaningful way, you just end up trying the latest, newest thing, getting the clicks and the likes, looking for the best email marketing system or whatever it is, rather than actually dropping into the thing that gives you that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day when you can fall asleep empty but so damn fulfilled. And who knows what it is for you? Maybe it's dance. For Michael Jordan, I guess it was basketball. Bill Gates, I guess it was computers. What gives you meaning will be unique to you. And even if it's something that somebody else does, it will have a unique flavor to it. So there's the homework. It's very simple. Spend some time journaling over the next few days. Best thing early in the morning or late at night. Writing out what it is over this year, so 3 months, where you felt most in flow, most connected to the universe, where time's gone most quickly, whatever version of that, most connected to God. Your languaging will help. And write out all of the times you can remember that happening and look for the common thread. Once you have those common threads, bring it back even further, the past decade, the past 2 decades, over your life. When were the moments that you felt that same thing? And what is the common narrative? Once you have that, and this should take a week, maybe 2 weeks, and also a lifetime. Once you have the basis of that, the moments that would bring you the most meaning, then you use that to plan what you're going to do in the future. And you may realize that the job you're in is not the right job for you. You may realize that the job is the right job, but what you're spending time on most is not right for you. You may realize that there's some hobby that you had given up because it didn't make sense financially, and you decide to start carving avocados or whatever that project was again because the sense that it gave you was one of peace and fulfillment and ultimately meaning. So I would love to hear how this goes from you if you decide to take it on. I've found it's been, I would say, one of the most important elements of self-inquiry that I've undergone, to give me a direction in which to move forward, so I'm not just fumbling in the dark, an anchor point to move forward to. And I think that's it. Thank you for listening. Leave any comments that you want. Get in touch. Let me know how it goes. And wherever you are today, I hope you do at least one thing that feels deep and meaningful. Thanks, everyone.